Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss. I am the political dragon here in our offices in the Bronx, New York. I'm speaking with you today. It's March 6th, about midnight, and I think there's a big concern that is hidden from the American people in efforts to fortify the 2024 election. And I think it's going to have a massive impact to the future of America and the world overall. And it doesn't matter whether you like President Trump, you like Joe Biden or RFK or Libertarian. It really doesn't matter what your preference is in the 2024 election. What's happening may affect everyone, regardless of who wins in November. And we want to talk a little bit about that today with you, to make this a little more clear and to hopefully prevent what is happening from happening. Now, before we get started, I do want to mention that if this is the first time that you're seeing our channel, we welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. We do long-form political commentary, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out across all the internet that the social media giants will allow to be able to hear your voice from anywhere in the world, to call in or to leave your chat live and to tell us what you think about the issues that are affecting us all, because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe you were born with a right to be able to critique and speak about the politicians and issues that are affecting each and every one of us. We hope you will join us this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to share your voice as well. So we're getting in the results of Super Tuesday as we speak. And we can see that already many of the results are showing Donald Trump is going to win in a landslide. No one is surprised. We see that Joe Biden is winning in a landslide. Nobody is surprised. While there may be some people who are praying that Nikki Haley might pull this off, it's not happening. The results for RFK aren't important yet. He's an independent, and so he's going through a different process. The Libertarian candidates haven't been named yet. Candidates in the Green Party, Socialist Party haven't been named yet. But essentially, the race is going to be Joe Biden, Donald Trump, maybe also including RFK Jr. That's just the reality of it. And again, it doesn't matter. What we're going to be talking about doesn't matter about the results from Super Tuesday. If there's somehow a miracle and Joe Biden or Donald Trump are replaced, it doesn't matter if you believe in a libertarian candidate, a third-party candidate, RFK Jr., it doesn't matter. This will affect America and the world no matter who gets on the ballot or who happens to win. Now, with that said, we do know that this week, on Monday, ahead of Super Tuesday, the Supreme Court of the United States addressed the ballot issue in Colorado. Previously, in December, Colorado said that they were removing Donald Trump from the Republican primary ballot, and he could not be written in. We saw that Maine also followed suit on the same reasoning, and we saw that Illinois also followed suit. Several other states were thinking about doing the same thing. The reason why they did this is the judge in Colorado declared Trump as an insurrectionist. She just made the declaration. There is no charge against Trump. There has never been a conviction against Trump that says that he is an insurrectionist. But that judge had an opinion, a feeling that Trump was an insurrectionist. And therefore, because she had that feeling, well, Trump had to be punished as a result. Now, you may agree with that. You may disagree with that. It doesn't matter. That's not what's important in the conversation at this moment. Because the Colorado Supreme Court Justice made that decision, we then see the cascade. Trump was potentially going to be removed from the ballot in multiple states It would be the first time in American history that that had ever happened. Many people were concerned, maybe not everyone, but many people were concerned that that would lead America down an authoritarian path. It is the kind of action we see in countries in Africa, the former Soviet Union, in China, where the public are denied a choice or their voice, which is something explicitly stated in the United States Constitution. It is part of the happiness clause. Life, the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. That's what America's about in the Declaration of Independence. That's what America's about. And anything that takes away from the freedom of choice, which is essential to America, the freedom to choose, whether that's a good choice or a bad choice, is really immaterial. It's Americans have the right to choose, unlike most nations around the world. And that's reflected perhaps the most in our ability to elect anyone we choose. And year after year after year, we see that Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, write-in candidates expressing a displeasure with all the candidates, all the above, happen every year. Somewhere around 2 to 5% of ballots in every level of government, from the local, the state, and the federal. We will see that people will write in Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, someone who's dead, anyone other than the candidates that are on that ballot, because we have that right. It is our choice. We get to choose that and make ourselves heard through that vote. It's something that our viewers in other countries may be very unfamiliar with because they don't have that right. That isn't an option. And essentially, what we were seeing from Colorado, Maine, and Illinois was very much akin to that idea that the government gets to choose who appears on a ballot and who is not. Now, their argument was based on the fact that the 14th Amendment says that if you committed an insurrection, you are not allowed on a presidential ballot, on a federal ballot. This was because of the Civil War. Fair enough. That's exactly what the law says. And no one's disputing that. The question is, does that apply to Donald Trump? Someone who has not received due process, and that means that he has been charged, he has been seen by a jury of his peers and convicted. He has not been convicted, nor has he been charged. So that's a problem. And let's be very clear about this, because I think it's very important to understand, and the media doesn't necessarily make it very clear. There is a charge of insurrection, rebellion or insurrection. It is 18 U.S. Code 2383. So if the United States government, if elected officials, if members of Congress actually believe that Donald Trump committed insurrection on January 6th of 2021, this is what they would execute. That's what the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, is for, to put out this charge, to bring Donald Trump into a courtroom, to present his evidence, and 12 peers, 12 Americans, would then decide, based on that evidence, is Donald Trump guilty or innocent? Until that moment, Donald Trump is unequivocally and absolutely innocent. That is American law, different than law in every other country in the world. Donald Trump is absolutely innocent of insurrection or rebellion, regardless of what any individual may feel, regardless of what any individual would prefer, regardless of whether they are elected or not. That is the law. That is a fact. Period. Therefore, the 14th Amendment doesn't apply. That is our understanding of the law. Since he has not been charged, you cannot punish him. That is also part of the 8th Amendment. The 8th Amendment, which states, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Which means you cannot be punished for something that you have not been convicted of. You cannot be punished with a crime that you have not been charged with, that you have been found guilty of. It's absolute in American law. Now, I understand. Some people may believe, they have very strong feelings that Donald Trump is a bad guy, orange man bad. We get that. And if you have that feeling, that's your feeling. You can have it. You can vote based on it. That's up to you. We're not here to change your mind about that. But we are trying to understand what is happening, because this will affect generations to come. It will determine whether or not the Constitution is broken and whether or not America can continue to exist. So these are the facts as they exist. Now, the Supreme Court decided, for whatever reason, not to address the Eighth Amendment issue, which is that Donald Trump is innocent, absolutely and unequivocally, that it is irrefutable that he is innocent, as he has not been charged, and more especially, he has not been convicted of the crime of insurrection, rebellion. And let's be clear, an impeachment is a trial in Congress for a president and several high offices. It isn't a proof of guilt. Being impeached doesn't mean you're guilty. It means that there is a trial in the Senate, and then, based on that vote, you will either be guilty or innocent. Fair enough. But Donald Trump is innocent. That is a fact. Whether people like it or not doesn't matter. So to punish him for something that he has not been convicted of is unusual and cruel. The Supreme Court, instead of addressing that, said that the 14th Amendment can only be enforced by a federal office. Now, that doesn't change whether or not Donald Trump is innocent. He already is. That's not a question. And no matter how many judges may say they feel or they have an opinion, no matter what state government, anyone at state government, no matter what the level, no matter how they feel, no matter how many times they say it should be a fact, that it should be true, it isn't. Donald Trump is innocent. To punish Trump by denying him from being on a ballot, the Supreme Court said, well, that's only something the federal government can do, as this is a federal case, which would mean that the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, would need to put charges in front of Trump, bring him into a courtroom, and then have him judged guilty, and then the 14th Amendment would apply. The other way to deal with that is to have Congress pass a very, very specific law referring to January 6th, and by doing that, then target Donald Trump to prevent him from being on the ballot. Now, this is all very important because it's part of the fortification of the 2024 election. We've talked about this on this channel many times in our Sunday live stream. But to summarize that somewhat, we know that in 2020, as reported by Newsweek and the shadow cabal that existed in 2020, a cabal, a group of media, social media companies, political organizations, and elected officials worked together to what they called fortify the election, to drive people to a singular result that would allow Joe Biden to win. That's what they did. They admitted it. There was credible news story from Newsweek about this. Fair enough. And we're seeing that happen again now, where Google through its algorithm is selectively ranking information, news stories that lead people to a conclusion that Joe Biden is doing well and they should vote for him. You're seeing that on YouTube and in other social media, where anything that is not promoting Democrats, Joe Biden, is harder to find and harder to share with the general public, leading the public, hopefully, according to those Democrats, according to that shadow cabal, to funnel them into a decision that they want. That is the premise we believe in. You may disagree with that. We're happy to hear the arguments that say that that's not happening. But we have shown for weeks now, for months now, that this is in fact happening based on decisions by Google, YouTube, many of the social media giants and news media. With that all said, we understand the circumstances that bring us to Super Tuesday. We see now on Super Tuesday, Donald Trump has won in a landslide, including in Colorado, and he's on the ballot. He's winning, but the attempt to fortify the 2024 election has not ended yet. It is still the goal of many Democrats, many never Trump individuals who do not want to see Trump even capable of running. Their fear of him winning is so great they don't want to give him the opportunity to be a choice for the American people that they're trying to find another way to execute the 14th Amendment to ban him from the November election. And that's the part that really concerns me. That's the part that's bringing us to today, the danger that we see for America going forward. We started seeing articles like this one. This comes from The Independent out of the United Kingdom. Top Democrat plans to remove Trump from the ballot after Supreme Court ruling. This is Representative Jamie Raskin, who's trying to find a way to apply the 14th Amendment against Trump without violating the 8th Amendment, without violating the Supreme Court's decision. And he believes he has a way to do that. We also see this in an article from Axios, which is a far-left news media organization. Top Democrat, quote, working on bill responding to Trump's ballot ruling. Now, this was published on March 4th. Today is March 6th. And we can see that Jamie Raskin is looking to revive House Resolution 93. And this House Resolution is very specific. It targets January 6th of 2021. And it determines that individuals that were there, especially Donald Trump, were responsible, that they classify it as an insurrection, and therefore the president is also liable for that, which would then enact the 14th Amendment and would then prevent Trump from being on the ballot in 2024. Except no one agrees with this. No one agrees with the bill. You can read the bill for yourself. The links will be in the description so that you can see this for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Read this for yourself so you understand. But one of the most telling things about this is a bill that was introduced by Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz out of Florida. And what we see is only Representative Jamie Raskin out of Maryland, they're the only two people who supported this. It's because it's not constitutional, because it doesn't stand up in a court of law. This is something that I think is very important. It's called a bill of attainder. Now, it's a legal term. Many people may not have heard about this. It is illegal in the United States. It is specifically unconstitutional as stated under Article 1, Section 9 and Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. It violates these articles because, 1, the law inflicts a punishment without a crime having been committed. Let me be clear about that. A crime that you have been convicted of, because you have to be convicted for that crime to be applied to you. So it violates the 8th Amendment. The law targets specific named or identifiable individuals or groups. Well, it's applying to the individuals on January 6th. It is specifically targeting the President of the United States of January 6, 2021. That would be Donald Trump. So it is both identifiable to the individual it is targeting and a very specific group of individuals on that day. So it is a law meant to punish an action, a person, a political ideology. Third, those individuals or groups would otherwise have judicial protections. Now, here's the part that a lot of people go, I'm not sure what that means. What are you talking about? Let's take this from the legal terminology and try and put it into regular terms. You did something that someone doesn't like, and they are going to go out of their way to target you specifically, to punish you, even though they can't legally do so. And that's what we're seeing here. Because if this were properly done, if due process was happening, well, then Donald Trump would go to a court of law. In fact, this is part of the American process. We have this. Again, this is coming from Cornell Law School. Due process. The Constitution states only one command twice. The Fifth Amendment says to the federal government, Constitution is a limitation on the federal government, not the people, not the state, to the federal government, that no one shall be, quote, deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, end quote. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, uses the same 11 words called the Due Process Clause. Now, you may say, well, what does that really mean? Due process, as decided by the Judge Henry Friendly, is a series of 10 items that you must have to have been properly charged with the crime, tried for the crime, and convicted of a crime, so that it doesn't violate the Eighth Amendment. And those things would be a neutral and unbiased tribunal, that you had a neutral, or as neutral as possible, trial. Notice of the government's intended action and the asserted grounds for it. You were charged, you were told what those charges were. The opportunity for the individual to present the reasons why the government should not move forward with the intended action. You have the right to go to a trial to argue the case at the DA level, at the trial level, even with appeals. You have a right to fight what the government has accused you of. Number 4, the right for the individual to present evidence, including the right to call witnesses. You have a right to defend yourself, and the government cannot stop that, especially if you can point to a witness and say, here's my proof, here's my witness, I didn't commit that crime. You have to be given the right to present your argument, your proof that you are innocent. And again, in the American system, the government must prove their case, that you're guilty beyond a shadow of doubt. You don't have to prove your innocence. I know Nancy Pelosi recently famously said that, Donald Trump has to prove his innocence. No, he doesn't. No American has to prove that. The government, whether it's at the local, state, or federal level, the government must prove guilt beyond a shadow of doubt. The government has the burden of proof, not the individual charged. And that's what due process is about. We'll go on. Number 5, the right for the individual to see the opposing side's evidence. There are no surprises. You have a right. If they say they have a fingerprint, you get the chance to see that fingerprint to verify that fingerprint is yours. You have a right. If they say they have you on video, you have a right to see the video to confirm whether that was you committing the crime they are accusing you of, to see all of their evidence, kind of like with January 6th. There's 40,000 hours of video. We've seen 4,000 hours of video that show a very different context of what happened on January 6th, depending on the location you happen to be at, depending on the time of day. There was a very big difference between what we were shown initially, which was 30 minutes, not even 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of very hyper-edited video versus 4,000 hours of video that shows a very different context, a very different set of circumstances, and a lack of criminality mostly a lack of criminality for the thousands of individuals that have been charged with a crime. Going on. The right to cross-examine the opposition's witnesses. If they say oh, that person did it. Well, let's make sure you're not just making it up, that you're not trying to railroad someone into a crime to convict them. You have a right to say, were you really there? What did you see? Let's go over those details. Going on, a decision based exclusively on the evidence presented, that this isn't about personal feelings. No election, no trial should be about your feelings. Doesn't matter if you look like you're guilty. It doesn't matter if someone feels like you're guilty. Does the evidence prove that you are guilty of the crime you were charged with? You may be guilty of pickpocketing someone, but if you were charged with murder, you're not guilty of murder because you pickpocket people. There is a difference. You cannot be convicted of a crime you didn't commit. 8, the opportunity to be represented by counsel. As we know, we see this in movies all the time. If you do not have counsel, it can be appointed for you by the government. You have a right to represent yourself. You have a right to have a lawyer given to you by the court to present your case if you cannot independently have your own lawyer to represent you, so that everyone, and whether or not you think that's good or bad, whether you think that's enough or not, is an entirely different question. Doesn't matter if the government appointed lawyer is good or bad. It's that they're there. You have a lawyer. We can argue about the quality. That's a different argument, but you must be given that opportunity. 9, the requirement that the tribunal prepare a record of the evidence presented. They have to show, where did they get this evidence from? It can't be like the sock that was found in O.J. Simpson on the white carpet that had no blood stains. A bloody sock was found. Where did that come from? As we later found out, it wasn't there. That was not part of evidence that was found, and it was tampered with. Whether or not you agree, again, whether or not you agree with the other outcomes, the other circumstances, this is the process, due process, and that's something that was invalid. Number 10, requirement that the tribunal, the trial, prepare written findings of fact and reasons for its decision. When you say they're guilty, why? They're guilty of what exactly? Are they guilty of, again, going back to my earlier example, okay, was this person guilty of pickpocketing or murder? They're on trial for murder. They may be a pickpocket. That's an entirely different set of charges that they may or may not have. But were they guilty of murder? Kind of like with Kyle Rittenhouse. Was he guilty of murder? No. Whether you like that or not, whether you feel like that's a just thing or not, is immaterial. Does the evidence show absolute guilt beyond a shadow of doubt? That is our American system. Now, I go through that because the mainstream news media never goes through this with you. It doesn't explain these various factors that are very, very important. So to just remove Trump from an election, whether it's in the primary or on the November ballot, to just do so because you feel like he's a bad person is unconstitutional, and it destroys America. You destroy the Constitution. You destroy the American justice system. You're destroying the country. And that leads us inevitably towards a more authoritarian government, a government like we saw in the Soviet Union, like in China, in North Korea, where you have a choice of a dead person or the one party member, the leadership that's in control. And you can vote for either one. By the way, if you pick the wrong one, someone may knock on your door afterwards. That's what we see around the rest of the world in some of the worst countries out there. That's not what you see in America, a constitutional republic. We have laws to prevent that kind of thing from happening. But if we are cherry picking laws and we are targeting individuals simply because we don't like their politics, we don't like their look, You don't like the color of their skin. You don't like their policies. If that's the reason why you're targeting someone, then you're destroying America. Because America, there have been many presidents I don't like. I didn't like Obama. I thought he had bad policies. I thought he was ineffective and inefficient. But I wasn't trying to create a law specifically targeted to have him removed just because I don't like him. In fact, my reasoning has nothing to do with whether I like Obama or not. It has nothing to do with the color of his skin or his religion or his sexual preference. It has not, or his sexual gender. It has nothing to do with those things. Those are immaterial. Whether they're factors on whether you like or dislike Trump, Obama, or any president, that's on you. But that's not a reason to remove them from office. That's not a reason to target them for punishment for a crime that they have not been proven guilty of. And that's very important. News media doesn't have this conversation. I think it's essential. Far too few Americans understand that. Far too many Americans are hearing things like Nancy Pelosi saying that Trump has to prove his innocence, which is a perversion of the American justice system. And she, at the time, was Speaker of the House. She knows better. She knows the truth. And she said something that she knew to be false and said it as if it were a fact and true to the American people. You can call that misinformation. You can call that disinformation. She and her staff called it a misstatement, that she misspoke. You can call it a lie. You can call it a lot of things, but the fact is she was wrong. But how many Americans don't know that she was wrong? How many Americans don't know that you are innocent always up until the moment you have been found guilty in a court of law beyond a shadow of doubt? How many don't know that? Globally, we know there are billions of people who don't live in that system and don't realize that that could be the case. In America, 330 million people should know that. They don't. And that's why the media should be talking about that. So I wanted to cover that, so we understand how we got to this case. What's motivating individuals like Representative Raskin, Representative Eric Swalwell, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. We now understand why they are making the statements they are making. Independent, in their article, and they mention that these are the three representatives of Congress that are trying to punish President Trump, specifically President Trump, uniquely and individually targeting him for something that they could not go to a court and actually get done. Because if it could have been done in a court, it already would have been done by Merrick Garland at this time. They can't convict him, but they want to punish him anyway because of their political ideology or their personal feelings or their personal preferences, whatever it is. So Representative Raskin is saying that he is working on this bill, the House Resolution 93, to force the law to convict President Trump of a crime that he hasn't committed. And they're going to violate the Constitution. And when I say that, again, we know that there's something called Goodhart's Law. You may have heard of it. People might not. It essentially says that if a measure, if a law, legislation becomes a target, it ceases to be a good law. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. If you're targeting an outcome, a very specific outcome, a very specific individual through a law, then that law is bad because it cannot be effective. It cannot be efficient. Laws are meant to cover a broad swath. If you're targeting individuals willy-nilly just because you don't like them, well, that's an abuse of power. It is illegal to commit murder because it is a crime against humanity and society. Full stop. It covers a broad swath of everyone, and it helps to ensure the safety of everyone in America, not specific groups of people. That's a very big difference. Now, I've said all of that, and I hope you followed me so far, because I think these are all important elements that we understand. So, Democrats in several states don't like President Trump. Fine, that's their choice. And because they don't like President Trump, they're trying to punish him for a crime he has not been convicted of, he hasn't been charged with, and he hasn't been convicted of. And they're willing to violate the Eighth Amendment to do that by suggesting that the 14th Amendment will let them do it, which it does not. And so now Jeremy Raskin is trying to find an end around a loophole. He's trying to create a loophole to take out Trump. And he's getting support from Debbie Wasserman Schultz and from Eric Swalwell, Democrats, each and every one, progressives, each and every one, to try and achieve their political goal. In part because, well, Joe Biden isn't doing very well. They're afraid that Joe Biden is going to lose. As it stands, looking at poll after poll after poll, going back months upon months, Joe Biden is losing. He's losing consistently. And we can see that this has been the case pretty much since roughly, I believe that's September. Since roughly September of 2023, Joe Biden has consistently been losing to President Trump on a regular basis. And that has only grown more evident as we are getting closer to the 2024 election. And therefore, Democrats are very nervous. This is also true, even if we include RFK Jr. in that equation. Again, Trump is still winning, and significantly so, in line with all other polling that we have seen, and that again is consistent since about September. In fact, even if you were to include Cornel West, Jill Stein, and RFK, 5 candidates that would appear on the ballot in November at this moment, even if you're looking at it in that respect, again, President Trump still continues to win, and by the same consistent margin in as many polls consistently as we have seen in every other version. So now we understand the need. But what you are hearing in the media is to protect democracy, to protect your vote, to ensure that America will be protected. These individuals are going to subvert the actual foundations of the American government. They're going to destroy the Constitution. Because if they are allowed, if Jamie Raskin is allowed to move forward, if he were to somehow get this through Congress and through the Senate and signed by Joe Biden, this would destroy the Constitution. It would violate the 8th Amendment. It would violate the 14th Amendment. It would violate the decision by the Supreme Court, the portion that they didn't mention, which is you're innocent until proven guilty. And it would defeat due process. It destroys our legal system. It destroys our legislative system. It sets the precedent that going forward, any time that a political party has an opponent they don't like for whatever reason, that they would be able to either legislate a reason to deny them access to an election or to otherwise punish that individual. You would no longer need courts. And the only times that we see that happen are in the worst kinds of governments on the face of the earth, historically and currently. That is the case. And that has inevitably, in every case, led to the downfall of that nation and wars, at least in that region, if not in a more expansive area, affecting millions upon millions of people, if not the entire globe. I don't know if I've made my case. Maybe I haven't sold you on this. And by the way, if Eric Swalwell, if Jamie Raskin, if Debbie Wasserman Schultz, If any member of Congress, any elected official in America wants to dispute this with me, I'm happy to have that conversation. If there's a lawyer who can cite any law that refutes what I am speaking about, I haven't found it. I'm more than happy to hear that. And I'm more than happy to give any of the elected officials in America as much time as they require to refute anything and everything that I am pointing out. All the evidence, the sources, the legislation, I'm more than happy to go through it with them live. Or if they wish to send me a documentation, I will report that verbatim in full context if they wish. But I don't see that I am wrong. I do not see how I am misunderstanding the Constitution, the amendments, the Supreme Court, due process, and the intent as stated by Jeremy Raskin, by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, by Eric Swalwell, their intent, which is to fortify the 2024 election, to remove the opposition to their political agenda and goal. That's ultimately what 2024 is shaping up to be. It is an attempt by an established power base to maintain their power at all costs. If that means that the social media giants need to ostracize people and to suppress their the voice of the public on certain topics, they will do it and ignore evidence like, Hamas killed 34 Americans. They have captured 22 Americans that are being tortured, as confirmed by the UN. We know that's happening right now, and the news media doesn't talk about it. Don't believe me? Look at your local coverage. When was the last time you heard the mainstream news media talk about the Americans that were killed and or the Americans that are being held as hostages at this moment? There's a reason why that's being suppressed. There's a reason why we're not having that discussion, something that the government is obligated to do. That's the reason why we have governments, to protect the people. And we're not talking about that because it might affect the way you're going to vote in primaries. It might affect the way you're going to vote in November. And therefore, since it could have an impact that would lead you to a different outcome than what they would prefer, they are fortifying their position by not having that conversation about the economy and whether or not we're in a recession, about inflation that is continuing to go higher, the fact that there is a global food shortage that they will not discuss with you and that is affecting you as we speak. They're not talking about the hostages. They're not talking about the Americans abandoned in Afghanistan, in Ukraine, in the Sudan last year. These are stories you're not hearing about. You can call it misinformation. You could call it disinformation. You can call it obfuscation or suppression. But the net result is it fortifies the 2024 election by denying you the truth. They want you to make a decision without having the facts necessary to make an informed decision. And that is always dangerous. But again, it is equally as dangerous to see things like what we are seeing here from Axios, as an example. That they do not address what is happening here. They don't address due process. They don't address the lack of support for the bill that Jamie Raskin and Debbie Wasserman Schultz have already attempted to do. They do not address the fact that Trump is innocent until proven guilty, and that he has not been charged with insurrection, and that he has not been found guilty of insurrection. They don't address that at all. The danger here is once you start breaking the Constitution, then it is always broken. If you can break any one law, any one amendment, if you can punish people without a crime being committed or a person being convicted of that crime, then you can target anyone. If a president or a former president can be targeted unfairly without going through the system that already exists, and if a president or former president has no recourse, then no one does. And therefore, no one is free, no one is equal, and there is no impartiality to law or the judicial system. And that means that you have anarchy and you have totalitarianism. Maybe you disagree, but I think you should seriously consider this. Because if this moves forward, and it is being attempted, and we have seen that the desperation around Democrats and Joe Biden has been increasing. Democrats, the rank and file Democrats, do not want Joe Biden. Poll after poll after poll for a year, 2 years, almost 3 years now, have been saying consistently, Democrats don't want Joe Biden to run. They do not want him. If they have no other choice, there are some who will vote for him because they have no other option, but they don't want him. Or more importantly, for Trump to lose. That's their biggest concern. Trump must lose. Now, you may agree or disagree with that. That's not the point. But if they can do this to Trump, if they can do this to a presidential candidate, then they can do it to anyone. And they will. Because corruption is never limited to just one individual or one group of individuals. If the government is broken and corrupt, it affects everyone in our nation. And if our nation is weak and damaged to the point that our legal system, our judicial system, our legislative system no longer works, then every nation is going to be affected by that. It destabilizes the world, and it happens very quickly. We've seen this happen in nation after nation. Once a nation is broken, once their fundamentals have been shattered, they collapse almost overnight. I am terrified of this. And Jamie Raskin can say that he's on the right side of history and that he's doing the right thing and he's a good guy. Every villain says that. Every bad guy in every movie, every book, in real life, they always justify and say they're doing the right thing from their point of view. They're the good person. You can look at Thanos, you could look at Hitler. They all thought they were the good person doing the right thing. And everyone else who objectively looked at what they said and what they did, whether it be fiction or reality, we all come to the same conclusion. They're wrong. Drop the emotional baggage we may be carrying that may be clouding our view, making it hard for us to see the big picture, to see what is actually happening. And that's what the media wants right now. That's what Axios is looking to do here. They want you to be so emotionally swept up that you don't stop to look at what is actually happening and what is the consequence of what is being done. Again, this has nothing to do with whether you like President Trump or not. Doesn't matter if you're going to vote for him or not. Whether you write in Daffy Duck or RFK or Libertarian candidate or anyone else. It doesn't matter. This is more important than any one candidate. This is about America. And we should be talking about this. We should be worried about this. At least that's what we think here on No Soundbites Allowed. I look forward to seeing your comments. I look forward to hearing from any of the members of Congress that would like to speak on this. And we, of course, will be talking about this on the Sunday live stream at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, I thank you for your time today. I hope you'll come back and see some of the other things that we have done, and we hope you'll be well.
No Soundbites Allowed is a podcast hosted by Michael Vass. The podcast focuses on providing in-depth discussions on various political and social issues. As the title suggests, the aim is to go beyond quick sound bites and explore topics in greater detail. Michael Vass, the host, engages with guests to analyze and discuss current events, policies, and political ideologies. The live stream and videos cover a wide range of subjects, including politics, economics, social issues, and more. By delving into longer, more comprehensive conversations, No Soundbites Allowed aims to provide listeners with a deeper understanding of the complexities surrounding contemporary issues. AI is listening. Shouldn't you know what AI knows? Aren't you tired of being treated like a child by major media parrots and want to be respected as an adult? There is nothing to lose and a lot to potentially gain, so check out No Soundbites Allowed on all major social media platforms.